Today we're talking to Illeah Marcum of the Arkansas Crisis Center in Rogers now. Is that right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
When did y'all make them? Y'all used to be in Springdale and now you're in
We
Rogers?
did. We used to be at the Center for Nonprofits in Springdale, and then we downsized kind of throughout COVID. Everyone went mobile, so we downsized offices and moved to the Center for Nonprofits in Rogers.
Okay. And so how did the Arkansas Crisis Center kind of come to be? I mean, y'all kind of got an inspiring story, you know?
Yeah, so we were founded in 1985. Actually, it was started out with just a group of volunteers. There was a series of suicides at the Rogers High School. So a group of people got together. It started out in a basement. It started out kind of like a phone a friend. It was a hotline for teens to call for help. Very quickly, they realized it needs to be for everyone. So it expanded to all age groups. It started out just in Northwest Arkansas, but now we cover all 75 counties here in Arkansas.
Awesome. And so how did you get started there? What's kind of your journey? You know, it's a very interesting organization to end up with.
It is. I was a little nervous. Just the topic of suicide. I didn't know if maybe I had the experience, but I started out as a crisis call specialist answering the hotline. And then I moved into this position as the crisis services program manager. And prior to that, I worked for the Bentonville School District as a parent educator. So I'd kind of switched roles quite a bit, working with parents and children. But in many ways, we still do. I still work with adults. We still, we have youth that call into the hotline. So it's just a different area.
Awesome. Well, you say, starting off, you're nervous about maybe not having the right experience for, such a unique position. And I think with the topic of suicide, most people feel that way. It's a very overwhelming topic. And so what are those things? What are you looking for? What are the skills that help?
Yeah. So you have to establish that confidence. If you would like to volunteer on our crisis line, it is a 32-hour training process before you can even take your first call. That alone kind of helps with the confidence. But even today, after answering the line for 3 years, there's still those moments where you kind of take that deep breath right before you answer because you don't know what you're going to hear on the other end of the line. There's a lot of really, stories that really kind of tug on the heartstrings, and you have to be able to maintain, that professionalism. You have to be able to support the caller and put, your own emotions aside so that way you can truly support the person who needs the help.
Absolutely. Sometimes anxiety, and anxiety can be tied to those suicidal thoughts. And I've kind of learned through researching mental health, sometimes this anxiety can come from situations in our lives. Sometimes it's a chemical thing in our brain that there's medication to help. Are suicidal thoughts, is that something that is physiological or is that something that's more life-based?
Yeah, so what we believe is that a crisis is self-defined. It will look and feel different for everyone because we've all lived different life experiences. So something that's stressful for you might not be stressful for me and vice versa. So we believe that it is self-defined. It will look and it will feel different for everyone. We do know that suicide is a major health concern. Around 30,000 people die by suicide every year in the United States alone. We also know that it is the second leading cause of death for teens in the United States. So there have been extensive research as far as psychosocial factors associated with suicide and suicidal behaviors. However, there's still very little known about the neurobiology of suicide.
Okay. So often we're talking with farmers. That's what our whole project has been. We've followed 6 farmers throughout the year, and in general, that's a generally closed-mouthed community. I grew up in a farming community, and they don't wear their hearts on their sleeves. They don't like asking for help. And so now we're about 8 episodes in, 8 months into our process, and we've heard a couple of our farmers kind of acknowledge the growing suicide rates among farmers, not only in America, but in Arkansas. And so often in these small communities, we hear, I was just so shocked. I was so surprised. Last time I talked to them, everything seemed okay.
Yeah.
What should we be looking out for, what are those, maybe there are those little hidden signs that somebody may be struggling with suicidal thoughts. So as a community member or family member, what should I be on the watch for?
Yeah, you bring up a really good point about how people are surprised. They don't see these signs. And, there's these phrases that I've seen on social media that say, check on your happy friends, check, because you never know what they're hiding, what they're struggling behind doors with. So I really do invite everyone to visit the 988lifeline.org. Okay. This is a website where anyone can go in. There will be a list of risk factors. There is going to be a list of signs that you can look for as well. There will also be additional resources. There's going to be an option to chat with someone. You can also dial 988 if you are concerned about a loved one. But some of those signs that you can look for, these can include talking about wanting to die, talking about suicide. It might be direct, it might be a joke, but take it seriously. Don't assume that someone is saying these things as for attention. So many times people are like, oh, you're just saying that for attention. But are they? Right. We don't know. It needs to be, investigated a little bit more. Take it seriously. Maybe they're looking for a way to complete their suicide plan, maybe trying to figure out how to buy a weapon or, how many pills does it take? They're researching how to complete that plan of suicide. You might hear them talking about feeling hopeless or helpless. Maybe they're talking about being a burden on their loved ones. Or sometimes I've had it explained to me as feeling like they're trapped in like a glass box and they just can't break through. Maybe the increased use of drugs and alcohol, maybe you're noticing some changes in that area. Sleep changes, maybe sleeping too much or not at all. Also withdrawing, isolating themselves from friends, maybe no longer completing those daily tasks that they always enjoyed previously, and just extreme mood swings. If that's not common for someone, recognize it, acknowledge that.
Right. So, I think more than anything is just that erratic change in behavior.
Yeah.
They're going to seem like a different person, probably.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
a much darker version of themselves, most likely.
Yes.
You bring up that question of isolation. For so many of our farmers, they live out in the middle of 10, 20, or 1,500 acres, and they may go a couple of weeks. And like I said earlier, I think the thing we or our community that we've kind of witnessed in this podcast is that they butt up against is these aren't people who are going to openly talk about their, like I said, we've been with them for 8 months and we knew we wanted to discuss suicide and we've kind of gotten a little bit out of a couple of them, but most of them still, they don't touch that topic.
Yeah.
So what's the best way to get, if I'm worried about somebody, how do I kind of start that conversation? How do I go about kind of bringing this ugly topic out into the open?
Yeah, I would say be direct. Ask the question. Are you thinking about suicide? Let them know the things that you're concerned about. So many people who do trainings with us, they're like, oh, I didn't know I could ask that. I thought if I asked, are you thinking about suicide, it would give them the idea. But that's not true. When you ask someone, are you thinking of suicide, what you're telling that person is, hey, I love you enough to ask this question. I'm worried about you, and I want to help. I am somebody who you can have this conversation with non-judgmentally. Oftentimes on the crisis line, when we ask this question, we can almost hear like a sigh of relief of like, like you can just hear that exhale of relief when they can finally take this burden that they've been carrying by themselves and actually share it with somebody.
Let's say I'm a farmer who may be struggling with this myself, and I feel very alone, and I'm out on the farm by myself. What are the immediate steps that I can take to kind of get help, maybe have that sigh of relief?
Yeah, I would say talk to somebody, listen to your body, listen to your mind. If you're experiencing those thoughts, again, you could dial 988. If there's not anyone in your life that you feel comfortable with having the conversation with, dial 988. It is a national number. Anyone can call from anywhere. You can also text the number as well. There will be someone on the other end of that line who will talk to you. They will help you locate resources that are in your area. And I will be honest, I have noticed with our more rural communities, it is hard to find mental health resources. Oftentimes it requires traveling to the next town over, or in those smaller communities, it's a specific request. I want help in a different county because they fear gossip in those smaller communities. But yeah, reach out for help. Don't be ashamed of it. Just talk to somebody.
So whenever I was kind of doing my research, I noticed on the Arkansas Crisis Center, y'all's big primary goal, your kind of bannerhead goal is...
This was a goal that was established long before I started with the Crisis Center.
Right.
And that goal was 0 suicides by 2025. And now our ultimate mission is to restore hope, empower people, and save lives through suicide prevention and suicide education. When the goal was chosen, I think the question that was brought up is how many suicides are acceptable? 0. So how could you choose any other goal than to reach 0 suicides by 2025? Now the date when it was chosen, I have no idea when that date was chosen, and I know 2025 is coming up really, really close. But again, the question is, is any number acceptable? So I think that's ultimately why 0 suicides is what was chosen.
Absolutely. And I mean, since 1985, in general, have we seen the numbers fall? I mean, how are things looking in Arkansas?
I think people are talking more about mental health.
Absolutely.
The stigma is definitely shifting. And, COVID-19 was hard. It was really hard. But the reality is in many ways it brought light to the importance of mental health, to the importance of self-care, to the importance of just social interaction. Because for a lot of people, that's what they lost. There were so many changes, like all at once, the isolation, job losses, and then there was the inflation in prices. So
Absolutely.
It was a series of risk factors that was hitting homes, but it brought a whole new light on to the importance of mental health and seeking help. So I definitely think the stigma is changing, and more people are talking about suicide and getting the help that they need.
Absolutely. I mean, we know without a doubt the pandemic was a terrible thing. I mean, it was this. But I do think, kind of like you said earlier, I think particularly in America, we're kind of defined by what we do, right? And so we had a nation of people who were running at 110 miles an hour, and I think kind of that slowing down and that spending 2 years maybe and resetting a lot of goals. I think there were a lot of people were kind of left alone with themselves to think about and I think this idea of like, oh man, I've been doing what I was supposed to do my whole life, but am I happy doing it? You know what I mean? Like, am I fulfilled doing these things? And so I know y'all got started addressing teen suicide, and of course our grant got started addressing farmer suicide, which has been on a meteoric rise in the last decade. Are there any other populations that y'all have kind of witnessed that struggle with suicide in Arkansas? Are there any other Arkansans that are...
So I will say, just in general, middle-aged people, especially men, have the highest rate of suicide compared to other groups. So 80% of all deaths by suicide in the United States are among men and women between the ages of 45 to 54. And, because you asked about farmers specifically, I was trying to find some specific statistics on farmers, and that was difficult.
Absolutely.
I was like, is there anything out here? But one thing that I did read, and I can't remember the resource, but I did read that suicide rates among farmers are 6 times higher than the national average. And I myself was really surprised by that. But yeah, so mainly middle-aged people, especially men, are at the highest risk.
Yeah, I mean, from what we've heard, like I said, we're following a group of women and a group of men, different farmers from around the state. And like I said, the topic of suicide has been kind of tangential. We haven't kind of come at it head on because it's difficult for that population to address this topic. They don't feel comfortable. But a ton of them, it is, man, somebody in the community hits 50, 60, and I mean, it's an incredibly hard job. You've spent your life working very hard, and then at the end of 50 and 60, you know, it's an incredibly hard job just to survive year to year.
Yeah.
You're not always building up that, you know, somebody working in an office, we're stashing away for retirement every year. And I think that, you know, that's where I mean, it's just, and then, the last 3 years have been inflation and markets and COVID. And so, hard to be an American farmer these days, for sure.
Agreed.
So, thank you so much. Like I said, I think we've kind of covered everything. Is there anything else, like about the Crisis Center that you'd like for people to know? You know, anything else you'd like to share?
You know, we are 24 hours, 7 days a week, including holidays. We are one of 3 organizations here in Arkansas that do answer for 988, the Lifeline. It was previously known as the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, but now it is the 988. So you can call that number, you can text that number any time of day, and you will be routed to one of 3 organizations here in Arkansas.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much. You know, it's an important topic, and it's a hard topic to discuss, but we're so thankful that you guys are out there answering the phones and helping the people you can.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for having us. We appreciate sharing it.
If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Visit arpbs.org for more stories and content like this from Arkansas PBS.